Your car doesn't usually fail without warning. It starts with a sound, a squeal when you hit the brakes, a clunk over bumps, a strange noise that wasn't there before. Most people ignore it until it turns into a bigger problem. But the truth is, those sounds are your car trying to tell you exactly what's wrong. In this video, I'll walk you through the most common car noises, what they mean, where they come from, and how you can quickly tell what's actually causing them. Because once you understand the sound, you can catch the problem early and avoid a much more expensive repair. Number 1. Brake noise. Squealing or grinding. Have you ever hit the brakes and suddenly hear a high-pitched squeal? At first, it might not seem like a big deal. Maybe you think it's just dust or moisture, but that sound is usually your car trying to warn you. If you're hearing a squealing or grinding noise coming from your wheels, especially when braking, the most common cause is worn brake pads. Here's what's actually happening. Brake pads are designed with a built-in wear indicator. It's a small piece of metal that starts making that squealing sound when the pad material gets too thin. So that noise isn't random. It's your early warning. But if you ignore it, things get worse. Once the brake pad material is completely gone, the metal backing plate starts grinding directly against the rotor. And that's when the sound changes, from a light squeal to a harsh grinding noise that gets louder every time you brake. At that point, you're no longer just wearing out brake pads, you're damaging your rotors. Now here's something most people don't realize. Not every squeak means your brakes are bad. Sometimes you'll hear a light squeal early in the morning, after rain, or from brake dust buildup. That kind of noise usually goes away quickly. But if the sound is consistent when braking, getting louder over time, or turning into a grinding noise, that's not normal anymore. That's wear. So here's a quick way to check it. Take the wheel off and look at your brake pads. If the pad material looks thin, or worse, you're already seeing metal-on-metal contact, you've found the problem. And this is important. If you catch it early, it's just a brake pad replacement. Simple and affordable, but if you wait too long, you'll end up replacing rotors too, and that cost goes up fast. So if you hear a squeal, don't ignore it. And if you hear grinding, that's already damage happening. Number 2. Engine noise. Squealing or chirping belt. You start your car, and right away, you hear a high-pitched squealing noise coming from under the hood. Sometimes it only lasts a few seconds, but other times it keeps coming back, especially when you turn on the AC or turn the steering wheel. If you're hearing that kind of squealing or chirping sound from the engine bay, that noise is usually coming from your belt system. In most cases, the cause is a worn or slipping belt. Here's what's actually happening. Your engine uses belts to drive important components like the alternator, power steering pump, and AC compressor. Over time, those belts can become stretched, cracked, or even contaminated with oil. When that happens, the belt can't grip the pulley properly anymore, and it starts slipping. And that slipping is exactly what creates that high-pitched squealing sound. Now here's where it gets important. That noise often shows up during cold starts because the belt is stiff and less flexible. But as the condition gets worse, you'll start hearing it more often, especially when the engine is under load. For example, if the sound changes when you turn the steering wheel, it could be related to the power steering system. If it gets louder when you turn the AC on, it may be connected to the AC compressor. These small changes can help you track down exactly where the sound is coming from. So how do you confirm it? Open the hood and inspect the belt. Look for cracks, fraying, or a shiny glazed surface. You can also twist the belt slightly. If it feels too loose or turns too easily, that's a sign the tension isn't correct. Also keep in mind, the problem isn't always the belt itself. A weak or failing tensioner can cause the same slipping issue, even if the belt still looks okay. And this is important. If you ignore this noise, the belt can eventually slip more or even snap. And when that happens, systems like your alternator or power steering can stop working suddenly. So if you hear that squealing sound, don't ignore it. It may sound minor now, but it's often the early sign of a bigger failure. Number 3. Steering noise. Groaning or whining. Turn the steering wheel at low speed, and you might hear a groaning or whining sound coming from under the hood. It can sound like something is struggling, especially when you turn at low speeds or while parking. If you're hearing that kind of noise when turning the wheel, that sound is usually coming from your power steering system. In most cases, the cause is low power steering fluid, or air getting into the system. Here's what's actually happening. The power steering system relies on fluid pressure to help you turn the wheel smoothly. When the fluid level is low, or when air gets into the system, that pressure becomes unstable, and when that happens, the pump starts making that groaning or whining noise. At first, you might only hear it during tight turns, but as the condition gets worse, the noise can become more noticeable, and the steering may start to feel heavier or less responsive. Now here's something a lot of people overlook. Even if the fluid level looks normal, the system can still have a problem. If air is getting into the system, the fluid can become foamy or milky, almost like a latte, and that can also cause noise. So, how do you confirm it? Start by checking the power steering reservoir. Look at the fluid level and condition. If it's low, top it off with the correct type of fluid. Then, with the engine running, open the cap and look inside. If you see bubbles or foam forming, that's a sign air is getting into the system. And this is important. If you ignore this noise, it can eventually damage the power steering pump. And once the pump is damaged, the repair becomes much more expensive. So if you hear a groaning or whining sound when turning, don't ignore it. It's usually a fluid or pressure issue, and catching it early can save you from a much bigger repair. Number 4. Rumbling at high speed, wheel bearing or tire. When you are driving on the highway, have you ever noticed a low rumbling or humming sound that gets louder the faster you go? At first it's subtle, but as your speed increases, the noise becomes more noticeable. If you're hearing that kind of sound at higher speeds, it's usually coming from your wheels. Most commonly, the tires or the wheel bearings. In many cases, the cause is a worn wheel bearing or uneven tire wear. Here's what's actually happening. A wheel bearing allows your wheel to spin smoothly with minimal friction, but as it starts to wear out, it creates resistance and vibration. That vibration turns into a low rumbling or humming noise that increases with speed. Tires can create a similar sound too, especially if they're unevenly worn, cupped, or starting to fail. Now here's where it gets tricky. This type of noise can be difficult to identify because it doesn't always come from the engine, and you can't see a bad wheel bearing from the outside. So, how do you narrow it down? One simple test is to shift into neutral while driving at speed. If the noise stays the same, it's likely not coming from the engine or transmission. It's coming from the wheels. Another trick is to gently weave left and right within your lane. If the sound changes or gets louder on one side, that usually points to a worn wheel bearing on that side. For tires, you can do a visual check. Look for uneven wear, bald spots, or bulges. These are all signs that the tire could be the source of the noise. And this is important. If you ignore a bad wheel bearing, it can get worse over time, and in extreme cases, it can affect wheel stability. And if it's a tire issue, it can reduce traction and safety at high speeds. So if you hear a rumbling sound that gets louder with speed, don't ignore it. It may not sound urgent at first, but it's often a sign that something in your wheels is starting to fail. Number 5. Clicking noise when turning, CV axle. When you make a sharp turn at low speed, you might start hearing a repeated clicking sound coming from the front of the car. It's especially noticeable when pulling into a parking lot or making a U-turn. If you're hearing that kind of clicking noise when turning left or right, there's a very good chance it's coming from your CV axle. In most cases, the cause is a worn CV joint, especially the outer joint, which handles the most movement during turns. Here's what's actually happening. The CV axle connects your transmission to your wheels, and it uses joints on each end to allow smooth movement while turning and driving. These joints are packed with grease and protected by a rubber boot. Over time, that rubber boot can crack or tear. When that happens, the grease leaks out and dirt and debris get inside. Without proper lubrication, the joint starts to wear out internally, and that's what creates that clicking sound you hear when turning. At first, the noise may only show up during sharp turns, but as the damage gets worse, the clicking can become louder and more frequent. In some cases, you might also feel a slight vibration when accelerating, and that vibration may go away when you let off the gas. So how do you confirm it? Take a look under the car and inspect the CV boots. If you see cracks, tears, or grease splattered around the area, that's a strong sign the joint is already damaged. You can also try moving the axle by hand. Push it forward and backward. If there's excessive play or a noticeable clunk, the joint may be worn internally, and this is important. If you ignore this problem, the joint can eventually fail completely, and when that happens, power won't be properly transferred to the wheel. So if you hear a clicking sound when turning, don't ignore it. It may start as a small noise, but it's often a clear sign the joint is already wearing out. Number 6. Clunking noise, over bumps, stabilizer link/suspension. Driving over a small bump shouldn't sound like something is loose, but sometimes you hear a solid clunk coming from underneath the car. It's usually more noticeable on rough roads, speed bumps, or uneven surfaces. If you are hearing that kind of clunking noise from the suspension, one of the most common causes is a worn stabilizer link, also known as a sway bar link. Here's what's actually happening. The stabilizer link connects the sway bar to your suspension, helping keep the car stable when driving over bumps or during turns. Each end of the link has a small joint, protected by a rubber boot and filled with grease. Over time, those joints wear out. The rubber boots can crack, the grease leaks out, and the joint becomes loose. And once there's play in that joint, it starts making that clunking sound every time the suspension moves. At first, the noise might only happen on bigger bumps, but as the wear gets worse, even small road imperfections can trigger that clunk. Now here's something important. Suspension noise can come from many different components, but stabilizer links are one of the most common and easiest to overlook. So, how do you confirm it? You'll need to inspect the link directly. Look behind the wheel and locate the stabilizer link. It's usually a vertical bar connected to the suspension. Check the rubber boots for cracks or damage. Then try moving the link by hand. If it feels loose, rotates too easily, or makes a knocking sound, that's a clear sign it's worn out. A good link should feel tight and firm. You shouldn't be able to move it easily by hand. Also look for other signs like bent components or loose mounting hardware, which can also cause similar noises. And this is important. If you ignore this problem, it may not immediately stop the car, but it will affect stability and ride quality. And over time, it can put additional stress on other suspension components. So if you hear a clunking sound over bumps, don't assume it's something major right away. But don't ignore it either, because in many cases, it's a simple part that's already worn out. Number 7. Buzzing or rattling at certain RPM, exhaust shield. Everything sounds normal until your engine hits a certain RPM, then suddenly you hear a buzzing or rattling noise coming from underneath the car. It might only happen at specific speeds and then disappear just as quickly. If you're hearing that kind of vibration-like noise at certain RPM ranges, it's often coming from a loose exhaust heat shield. Here's what's actually happening. Your exhaust system runs extremely hot, so it's protected by thin metal heat shields placed around components like the exhaust manifold, catalytic converter, and exhaust pipes. These shields are designed to protect the car's body and surrounding parts from heat. Over time, those thin metal shields can rust, bend, or loosen. Sometimes small rocks get trapped between the shield and the exhaust. When that happens, the shield starts to vibrate at certain engine speeds, and that vibration creates that buzzing or rattling sound you hear. At first, it may only happen at a very specific RPM, like when you lightly press the gas. But as the shield gets looser, the noise can become more frequent and easier to trigger. Now here's something a lot of people don't realize. Because the sound comes and goes, it's often mistaken for something more serious inside the engine, but in many cases, it's just a loose piece of metal vibrating. So, how do you confirm it? With the engine off and cooled down, get under the car and follow the exhaust system. Look for any loose or damaged heat shields. You can gently tap or shake them. If you hear the same rattling sound, you've likely found the source. Also check for debris like small rocks stuck between the shield and exhaust components. And this is important. While this problem usually isn't critical, ignoring it can make the noise worse. And in some cases, a loose shield can eventually fall off or interfere with other components. So if you hear a buzzing sound at certain RPM, don't panic, but don't ignore it either. It's often a small issue, but one that's easy to fix once you find it. Number 8. Loud exhaust sound. Exhaust leak. Your car suddenly sounds louder than usual, almost like a modified or straight pipe exhaust. It might even sound deeper or more aggressive than normal. If your car gets noticeably louder like that, especially without any modifications, there's a good chance you're dealing with an exhaust leak. Here's what's actually happening. The exhaust system is designed to carry gases from the engine all the way to the muffler, where the sound is reduced before it exits the car. But if there's a hole, crack, or failed connection anywhere along that path, the exhaust escapes early. And when that happens, the sound doesn't get properly muffled, so it becomes much louder. The location of the leak also matters. If it's closer to the engine, the noise is usually sharper and more aggressive. If it's further back, the sound may be deeper, but still louder than normal. Now here's something important. In some cases, you might not just hear the leak, you might actually smell exhaust fumes, especially if the leak is near the engine bay. And that's not just annoying, it can be dangerous. So how do you confirm it? Start the engine and listen carefully from outside the car. Try to locate where the sound is coming from. Then shut the engine off, let everything cool down, and inspect the exhaust system underneath. Look for visible holes, cracks, rusted sections, or loose connections. Pay close attention to areas around the exhaust manifold, joints, and the muffler. And this is important. If you ignore an exhaust leak, it can get worse over time. The hole can expand, the noise gets louder, and in some cases, exhaust gases can enter the cabin. So if your car suddenly sounds louder than normal, don't assume it's harmless. It's often a clear sign that something in the exhaust system is no longer sealed properly. So those are some of the most common car noises and what they actually mean. The key thing to remember is this: your car almost always gives you a warning before something fails completely. A small noise today can turn into a much bigger repair tomorrow if you ignore it. But if you understand what you're hearing and catch the problem early, you can save yourself a lot of time, money, and stress. If this video helped you understand what your car is trying to tell you, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more real-world diagnostics like this. And if you're hearing a noise that we didn't cover in this video, drop it in the comments. I might cover it in the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.